Hey guys, how are you doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review, and today, let's break down a little bit of the Nintendo Switch's handheld status. So the Nintendo Switch has officially been out for 9 months. As of today, it is the 9th month anniversary of the Nintendo Switch launching, which is insane to think about. When we hit 6 months, everyone was shocked to think that we've already had a brand new Nintendo console, and a console that's been so successful out for so long. But here we are, month number 9, 2018 is right around the corner, and as you guys know I love to do, I like to find a lot of different facets and elements to the console and kind of break it down and dissect and discuss it on a video for you guys. It's what I do. I pose a question to myself, I pose the question to you guys, and then I discuss it from all sorts of different angles. What I wanted to do with this one is, like I alluded to, discuss the handheld status and the handheld nature of the Nintendo Switch, because surprisingly, and I guess also unsurprisingly, there's still a huge conversation and debate amongst a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people, I see it fairly regularly, about whether or not people really need to consider the Switch a home console or a handheld. So let's bear one thing in mind, you guys, before we get any deeper into this, and I'm going to share to you something really important, I think, to remember. It's for the most part my opinion and perspective, but I think it will be shared by a lot of people as well. At the end of the day, this kind of doesn't really matter, and I know you're gonna think it's silly because for all I know this turns out to be a 17 or 20 minute video that I've made discussing this idea because again that's what I like to do, but I don't really think we have to look at this as like the be-all end-all defining factor of the Nintendo Switch. I'm excited to get into the nitty-gritty because I think that stuff is interesting, and there are a lot of cool elements to approach this conversation from when it comes to the Switch. It's kind of one of the cool things about the console is it allows for a conversation like this. But what I do think is true, and a lot of people who maybe want to get really sensitive and up in arms and start defending this way or that way and just get so crazy about something like this, which a lot of people tend to do, I think that we need to remember that I don't think we're really defining anything adversely important about the Nintendo Switch. Is it a home console? Is it a handheld? I mean, it's technically really both, but who cares? If it even is one way or another, I don't think that it has any sort of negative impact on what the Switch is, because if you love it, then you love it no matter what you consider it. Whether you think it's a handheld or you think it's a console, if you love it, then you just love it. The games are great, the library is amazing, the functionality, the Joy-Cons, the OS is so smooth and simple running. We have games like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 just coming out. I mean, there's so much good about it that, like, let's not really care too much about this. So now that I've told you not to care about this conversation, let's go ahead and have this conversation. The Nintendo Switch, handheld or console? What is it really? What is the industry considering it? What are gamers and the consumers considering it? That's kind of the thing, and what really made me want to have this conversation is, like I said a couple of minutes ago, I do see this conversation happening, and for myself, who makes videos that are, 90% focused on Nintendo and on the Switch, and any of my other fellow YouTubers and other comrades, on the internet discussing the Switch and Nintendo products, you will see this happen. I see it in my comment sections a lot. Whenever I have a reason in a video to refer to the Switch as one or another, or if I call it the hybrid machine that it truly is, there will inevitably be people in the comments who are like, but Rob, it's actually a handheld, so you're doing it wrong and your conversation is null and void because it's actually a handheld, it's not a home console. Or the vice versa, it's actually a console, it's not truly a handheld, it's just a console that you can pick up and take with you and blah blah blah. And so people get really adamant about defending one way or another, and so because I've seen that, it got me thinking like, well, what is the Switch really, and how is it impacted by, coming down on one side or another? What would it mean for it to be one or another? So at the end of the day, I am definitely somebody who, when I describe the Switch, when I think of the Switch, when I discuss it on my videos, you guys know, to me, it's exactly what it's been since day one. It is a hybrid. I've already said hybrid like 7 times in this video, and that is exactly what it is. It is, in my personal opinion, the most appropriate and apt way to describe the Nintendo Switch. It is something that plugs into your TV, it allows you to play on a TV, whether you're using the Joy-Cons or you're using a regular old normal controller that we're all used to, you're playing it like it's a console on your TV. The games run like complete AAA or indie games on a console, on any other machine. They don't look the same, but they look appropriate enough. They are absolute modern 2017 games that are running on this machine, playing on your TV, sometimes with a normal controller if you choose to do so. To me, that's a home console. Games with the scope and of the size of a Breath of the Wild and a Skyrim and a Doom and a Mario Odyssey and a Xenoblade Chronicles and like an upcoming Wolfenstein, and we've got the NBAs, and WWE will come out maybe sometime before we all die. I mean, these kinds of games, we're not playing downgraded, watered down, and simplified handheld versions and ports of games. We're just not doing that. We are playing the full, complete console game experience, and we're doing it on a TV, you know? I mean, for those of us who've played a lot of the handheld, you know, different consoles in the past, I've played them all from the Game Boy leading up until today, and like the 3DS and whatnot, including things like the Atari Lynx and the Game Gear and some of those weird one-off machines. Like, typically, when you have like a handheld version of a game that's also releasing on the console, that is absolutely an immensely different version and experience than what you're getting on the console. The Switch is not doing that. The Switch is giving us the same Doom that you played on the PS4, the Xbox One, or your PC. The same NBA, probably the same WWE, the same Wolfenstein, the same Skyrim, you know, the same everything. We're literally playing the equivalent of those games on this machine. And so to me, you've got basically a home console right there. That is the Nintendo Switch being played on your TV as a home console. But there is obviously a big case present for how it could actually be seen as a handheld, or how it does even actually qualify itself as a handheld. The number one obvious reason is it's a handheld. I mean, it's a device with its own screen that is unique to the device, controls, buttons, you pick it up, you walk anywhere on the planet with it, and you're playing it on the screen that you have in your hand. That is a handheld. Not to mention, when we actually look at the Switch, and I know we all know this, but I'm just for the sake of the conversation, the Switch itself, the hardware and the machinery that actually makes up all the components that makes it a computing device that plays games and displays games, it's this. It's this. This is the Switch. It's got its fan, it's got its speakers, it's got all the graphics cards and computer processors. It's in this device. So this thing being mobile, this is the equivalent to a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One or a Wii U or whatever. The console is this device. And so again, I know we all know this, but when I point that out, it's to make sure that we all understand that is the true and proper defense for how this thing is actually a handheld. And so when we consider those things, that's where I come down on the side of exactly what I've said. It's a handheld and a console hybrid. Now, when people get really adamant and crazy and sensitive about the idea of it has to be one or the other and people have to agree with me, you have to agree it's a handheld because that's the only way to talk about it. Well, you better understand that it's a console, because if you don't call it a console, then everything's all pooped and then you can't do anything with the Switch. For people who are that way, I think that we need to consider why it may be important or not important for the industry and for gamers to look at it one way or another. And that's one of the cool things too when I thought about this conversation. It's like, well, what would it mean if it truly was considered a handheld? Let's say Nintendo labeled it 100% a handheld and they never went with this hybrid idea. They never actually, you know, described it as a hybrid. I think that they've done that several times. If this thing was truly built as a handheld, suddenly it changes, I think, the way we look at some games running on it. And so maybe when you look at the naysayers or the haters, or the people who are not super invested in it, when they see a game like Doom come out that we all agree is an incredibly impressive and competent port, but does have some downgraded elements to it, and like a missing mode like the snap map, for example, if it was billed 100% as a handheld only, the way the 3DS and the Vita and the PSP and Game Boys have been billed as a handheld only, it might be easier for some of the naysayers to say, to actually see the benefits and the positives, and developers as well, to see why it's more impressive of a machine than they maybe think of it now. Because right now, with its weird sort of hybrid nature, and the confusing nature to some people about that, they may say, well, for a console, that Doom looks really bad, and it doesn't even have all the features, and NBA doesn't look very good, so it's not a good console. But if people had the lens of, well, it's a handheld, so it's amazing that it plays Doom and NBA and all these things, that might change the perception of the naysayers and other developers in the world, maybe some of the developers that are struggling to develop on it, or maybe have no interest. Again, we all know, those of us who are Switch fans, Nintendo fans, me, most of you I'm sure, we know it already is amazing and impressive that these games are coming to the Switch and that they run on the Switch and look as good as they do. We understand this, but some people don't. It's those naysayers that I'm talking about. And when you change the definition of the Switch from a handheld, from a hybrid to a handheld, or from a home console to a handheld, that changes it. And conversely, if it was looked at only as a home console and not a handheld and didn't have that handheld aspect to it, it would then change the same people's perception in the sense of like, well, it's just garbage completely. It can't run games as well and make games look as well as its competition. It's just a weak home console, and there's nothing special about it. There's no reason I would play any game on this thing because it's a poor and underpowered home console. I got my PlayStations, my Xboxes, and my PCs. I would never go near this Nintendo Switch weird home console. It's not for me. And so that's where, when people want to define it as one way or another, those people I was kind of making fun of a little bit earlier, I think that's their mentality, and that's what they might be considering, even without realizing that's what they're considering. And I will admit that that conversation does have relevance. I mean, if you think about it, how Nintendo defined and built and marketed this thing could have really determined how people would look at it. They might see what it's capable of as more favorable if it was built as a handheld, or they might see it as more of a negative and less capable of a machine if it was built as a home console. And so that brings us full circle back to the idea of the fact that it is indeed, my opinion, but I mean, come on, it is indeed a hybrid. And so because it rests in this weird sort of limbic nature between the two ideas and actually does accomplish and deliver 100% on both the home console and the handheld experience for gamers, that kind of gives it some slack and it gives it some wiggle room that I actually like, and I think Nintendo knew it would have, and they've been able to capitalize on that, and they've been able to leverage it to their advantage in their marketing, how they're selling it to people, how they're releasing games, the games that they're choosing to make on it, the third-party partners they're choosing to partner with, and those companies' titles that they're having brought over to the console. And in my opinion, it's making everything that much more palatable, even for the naysayers and the haters. And I think that's why we're seeing a Nintendo console for the first time in 5 years be close to as successful as some of their most successful devices they've ever made. Now, we still need to give it another year or two to really get the full scope of its success, but as I discussed recently, and a lot of us probably agree, the success is only going to continue. It's going to be a super smash hit. It's going to be a very big hit. So, you know, at the end of the day, we're seeing people jump on board with Nintendo again because of the wiggle room of the handheld and the home console nature. I think people are being impressed by what it can do as a handheld and also accepting some of the limitations as a home console because of the hybrid nature. And it's just that weird Nintendo magic, man. They just know how to find that little random thing and just make it a huge thing that everyone loves, and it changes the course of the company and their success, and it changes the ideas and what we can expect out of gaming, and it's just what makes Nintendo so cool to me. So yeah, that's gonna be it, you know, a fun conversation, an interesting conversation, but like I said, nothing that anyone needs to lose their heads over. I'm sure there's gonna be people in the comments losing their heads. You guys, you scroll through the comments, you're gonna see some crazy stuff, I'm sure, and everyone's gonna be up in arms. You have to say it's this, or you have to say it's that. You can't say it's in the middle. That's just what crazy people do. And so that's just the nature of humans. It's the nature of gamers, man. People be really sensitive sometimes, and it's too bad. But you know what? The Switch is great because of the hybrid nature, so let's just enjoy and accept the fact that it does achieve something that no one else has truly done and delivered on, a hybrid console that does TV gaming and portable gaming impressively well, but we're playing console-level, modern 2017 game experiences on it no matter where we're playing it. It's awesome, and Nintendo is seeing success and selling out like crazy because of it. So that's the way I see this personal conversation. I want to hear what you guys have to say. What sides do you come down on? Do you come down on it's a handheld only, stop talking about home console? It's a home console only, stop talking about the handheld? Or maybe you're like me and a lot of other people, and you're like, dude, it's just a hybrid, and it's great for being a hybrid, so let's accept it that way. So whatever you feel, and think about the idea, and the Switch as a whole, just as a piece of hardware, talk about that below. So that'll be it. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.